Coaching Soccer Weekly, episode 365, Parent Meetings. Entertaining, educational, and inspiring soccer content to help make you a more effective coach, player, or soccer parent. Hello and welcome back to Coaching Soccer Weekly, presented by World-Class Coaching. My name is Sergey Rabinovich, and this is the podcast devoted to bringing you cutting-edge methods, techniques, and tactics for coaching soccer. It doesn't matter if you're an experienced coach who has been training teams for many years, or if you're new to coaching and working with the team for the very first time. There's something we can all do to take our coaching to the next level. Let's get right into it. So this weekend, we ended our U13 season. We actually have one more game, which they designate as like a playoff game. Not really sure why they call it a playoff game. The top four play against each other. First and second will play against each other. Third and fourth will play against each other, and so on all the way down. After the bronze game is what they call it, the rest of the games don't really matter. So that game will happen not this weekend, but the weekend after. It's Easter weekend here. So, that's it. And then U13s will be done until May, when we officially start our outdoor season. The rest of our teams will continue to play. Our U10s, U11s, they'll play until next weekend. They have a game this week and next week. And then our U11 team and our U12 team and our U9 team, they'll play until the end of the month. So they actually don't have a break at all, because right after the end of the month, we go into our first tournament in the beginning of May. So super excited for that. And yeah, that's kind of the future of what's going to happen this month. We had our VO meeting yesterday, and just analyzing using the VO camera, it was really apparent the difference for this weekend versus previous weekends. We never really reset the ball at all. We were always just kind of looking forward. And I don't like that. I really don't, because soccer is not just go, go, go. That's not what soccer is. Much like a song, the game has different beats, it flows. You know, it's not just let's attack the whole time. You've got to calm the game down, and you calm it down by resetting so that the other team relaxes. It's just like when you're doing the 1v1s and you're faking one way to go the other. You want them to act in a certain way. You want to bait them to act. And when you see that bait, that's when you attack. And it's the same thing in why we reset the ball, or why we hold the ball and wait for pressure sometimes. We want to bait them into coming at us and then opening the space behind them. And we really didn't do that. We didn't take our time. We didn't create passing lanes, the wingers and the center mids. We just had a hard time building out of the back. We couldn't get it out. Our midfielders, that's something that we're working really hard during our training sessions with the scanning, trying to break lines through passes, and it didn't really work. So that's something that we have to revisit and work on this week. So that's all VO. Being able to watch it in the game, you're obviously frustrated, kind of things aren't working and you don't know why, and then you can use the VO to analyze that afterwards. So if you're looking for a VO, $200 off. The code is in the description as well, and thanks to VO for sponsoring the show. I'm really excited for the next couple of weeks. The next couple of weeks are going to be something that really sets our academy apart, and that's our parent meetings. One of the things I'm so proud of is the way our parents act during games. None of our parents have ever been talked to by a referee. I'm very proud of that. None of our parents, well, there's a couple, but it's because they're new. But all the parents that have gone through these meetings before, they do not yell at players. shoot, pass. They don't give them instructions. So the reason is because of these parent meetings that we do. I'm doing one this week on Thursday for our tier 1 teams, and then next week will be our tier 2 teams. So I'll talk about a little how we're going to organize the outdoor season, how I talk about the parents, and I'll actually go through things slide by slide. So you are going to be essentially the parents for this episode. I'm obviously not going to talk like I will in the presentation, but I'll give you an overview of each slide, how I organize it. And that way, hopefully you can take that into your outdoor season and have this type of meeting. And I got to give credit where credit is due. You know, a lot of this is stuff that I got from Tom. So Tom, who was the old host of the show. And one of the things that we're doing, I'll talk about a little bit, I don't know if I will actually, but is I'm starting to do tournaments this year. I'm doing one tournament before the season starts so we can just kind of get right into outdoor. So I'm super excited about that. Anyway, let's talk about the parent meeting. So my very first slide always talks about the history of the academy. When I started the academy, and then I talk about how we've been growing. And it's basically been every year we've been doubling in the number of teams that we have. Then I talk about why I opened the academy. And it was essentially because I saw a really big problem. Other clubs, other academies, they really cared just about winning. It was a team-centered approach, and it wasn't a player-centered approach. There was no real development. It was, you're not good enough, get out. There are players coming in, so I don't need to make you better. What I'm proud of is that we don't cut players. I can't recall a time that we've ever cut a player from our team. And that's because once a player's in our team, they have the foundation to play on our teams, right? So we've never cut a player, ever. And I don't think that's something that I ever want to do. Now, the only time that would change is if there was an attitude issue, there was an issue with the parent, that would be a reason why I would cut a player. Other than that, from a purely soccer point of view, it's just not something that I want for the academy. And again, that's what makes us different. The philosophy that I have is really a holistic approach. We use soccer, and this is the next slide. We use soccer as a tool to create good people. And I've talked about this a lot in the past, that it's just a game, right? If you look at it as just a game and a way to really bring out the best in players, then that's something that is so much more powerful. And it's something that will impact the child for the rest of their life. We talk about some of the characteristics that come from our program and the way that we teach our players through our training sessions. And that's resilience, bravery, creativity, responsibility, sportsmanship, leadership. These are all things that we do within our environment, and we really have a focus on it. And our training sessions really mimic that. The next part is my favorite slide by far, and it is titled Parents Rule. There is a clip that I always show, and you can Google it. It's a TED Talk. It's called I Love to Watch You Play. It's on YouTube, and the parents watch it. I want them to see because it is so powerful. That YouTube clip really starts the conversation of you should not be yelling at your child and giving them instructions during the game. You shouldn't be in the car, scolding them on the way home or anything like that. And that's really what starts this conversation. I then talk about how in today's culture, kids are TV, tablets, phones, social media, and this is an opportunity and a gift to spend time with your child, to drive home, right? Just to be with your child without any of these distractions. And then I always say, how I end the podcast, which is, you got to enjoy the journey, you got to enjoy the moments and enjoy the game, right? That's how I end the show. And that's what I want my parents to do. That's what I want to do. I want to enjoy the journey of their child, from 5 all the way to 18. And they should enjoy it. You get it once. That's all you get. You get to go through that journey once with your child. Simple as that. So you got to enjoy every moment, and you have to enjoy every game. You just have to enjoy it. And if you're losing 10-1, you still have to enjoy it, right? Because that game won't ever happen again. So the other thing that I say too is that during the game, a child is conditioned to hear their parents' voice. They recognize it. So if I'm yelling, at the child to, scan before or something like that, and then the parent yells, they're going to hear the parent over me every time. It's just the way the child hears their parent. That's how it works. So I talk about cheering for the past, not the future, right? So if it already happened, great. Then talk about it, yell, so great shot, that happened. Not trying to predict the future. So not pass, that yell, pass, shoot, that's something that hasn't happened yet. So that's something that we want to avoid from the parents. And then I give an example of just like in school, right? I always imagine a child, just working hours and hours and studying for an exam. They get to the exam, they're so excited. They've never studied so hard for this exam ever. The teacher gives them the exam, they turn it over, they write their name at the top. The teacher is right on top of them and starts yelling answers. And they're like, I know. On the first one, the teacher goes, the answer is 8. And they're like, oh, okay, but I can I try it? Can I try to do this? That's exactly what's going on every single weekend with parents. They're not giving them the opportunity to fail. They're not giving them the opportunity to be successful. And then kids in 10 years end up as people who are entitled, right? Why? Because throughout their whole childhood, the parent gave them the answers for everything. They were never challenged. They never got through failure, never gone through success. They just got the answer. They always got the answer. So here we really have to allow them to make their own decisions. And that's when I start to go into our philosophy. And our philosophy is always winning over development. Now, I say that, but it's really not true at all, right? I say winning over development, but that's not what we are at all. Because for us, winning is development. So we win when our players get better, right? So even though I say winning over development, and that's kind of like our big motto, winning is development for us. And what I tell the parents is, your child is more important than the win. So I would rather your child get better than us winning on the scoreboard. And then I show examples of why we can't win. And that's constantly building out of the back and asking them to try really hard things, which is also why our players, if they leave our club, it doesn't matter where they go. They will always make a team, always, anywhere. Because what we ask them to do is so hard that for them to be successful, they're already doing things that the other team can't do. Other players on the other teams can't do. We played a team this weekend, and every single player pass first. 2 or 3 of them, decent 1v1s. But the rest of them, they couldn't do 1v1s. So the coach told them not to do 1v1s, right? All they did was just every time, first thing pass. And that's fine, right? But the only players that stood out were those 3 that could do those 1v1s on the other team. With us, every single one of our players, we try every game to make them stand out. Next, I talk about the coach's role, We never coach the player on the ball. So even if I yell, and I yell a lot, I don't yell at the player with the ball. I don't make the decisions for them. It's the exact same thing as we spoke about before with the teacher example, right? I'm the teacher. I want you during this exam to do what you want. My job is the players without the ball, right? So I'm constantly looking at a shape, seeing how we're going. Okay, are we open? Are we finding passing lanes? And at that moment, let's take 7v7. There are 6 players without the ball if we have it. Out of those 6 players, maybe 1 or 2 are not in the right position, and that's who I talk to, right? So the ideal would obviously be not to say anything, but the players that we coach, we never coach their decision-making on the ball. Next, I talk about last week's podcast. I talk about the power of failure, right? And that, in my opinion, the most important skill in life is to learn how to deal with failure. It allows players, and in this situation, it's not players, it allows children to build resilience, to develop problem-solving skills, risk-taking skills, to have this growth mindset, humility, and one of my favorite things is encourage innovation, right? In order to innovate, you have to fail. You have to, because you're not going to come out with something that works right away, right? So developing persistence, and then again, resilience in the face of adversity is so important. Next, I talk about the team breakdown. So first, I talk about the new league, which we're a part of, the TO Soccer League, which is now going to be, and I've talked about this in the past, combination of North York, Toronto, and Scarborough, all playing in one league together. I talk about how I would rather play short than have your child play on the bench. There are going to be games where we don't have enough players, and I'm okay with that, because I would rather them play the whole game than the opposite, which is sit on the bench for most of the game. And we have had that this year with our indoor team, right? Our 2012, 2013s, there were games where we had enough for 2 lines. And I hate that. I hate that players are playing a maximum of 50%. There should be players that are getting more than 50%. And the only way to do that is to be in situations where sometimes you're not going to have as many players come, right? If I have 9 players on my 7v7 team, or 10 players, and you have 3 subs, there are going to be times when, 3 players are sick, right? Or 4 players. Sometimes 2 are away and then 2 get sick. But I'm okay with that. The other thing I talk about is number of practices also affects playing time. So if you're not there 3 times a week, you're going to be playing less. And that's fair, I think. If you're putting in a lot of effort into something, this is what we want to teach our players, then you're going to get at least 50% playing time. We talk about coaching rotation. So all of our coaches coach all our teams. We don't have a dedicated coach for every single team, and I don't like that. Every club does it. Every single club. And we do not do that. We don't do that at all. So because of that, here's what happens. Our coach will go and coach a 2014 team, and they've worked with them in practice, obviously. Our coaches also go to all of our practices. Sorry, my phone's going off. And because they've seen every single player, in the games, we'll have a 2014 team playing, and then we'll have our 2011 team playing. They'll see the 2014s try and build out at the back, and they will lose the ball 5 out of 10 times. 50% of that age, under 9, not bad. Then they'll go into a 2011 game, and they'll start to see out of 10 times, or successful 8. So while the 2014s lose by a bunch of goals, our 2011s who have been practicing that since they were 2014s, since they were under nines, they're starting to get better and better. So our coaches, they see the big picture. Why? Because they're working with multiple age groups. They're seeing multiple teams. They're seeing the fact that 1v1 sometimes doesn't work, and that's okay, again, because by the time we're getting to that 2012, 2011, our 1v1s are phenomenal. Then I talked about the breakdown of the teams, the actual how many teams we have. We're going to have 2 2014 teams, a tier 1, a tier 2. We're going to have 2 2013 teams, a tier 1, a tier 2. 1 tier 2 2012, 1 tier 2 2011, and then a 2010, which is our under 13 tournament team. So this year, our under 13s are all the games are going to be in tournaments. So I'm super excited for that. This is the first time standings matter. Before this, so U12 and under, tournaments are festivals. There's no standings, there's no scores, there's nothing. So this is going to be that first experience for them to go into multiple tournaments and just start to compete. So really excited for that. The way that I'm going to do things within the tier 1s and 2s and all that is very different. Our tier 2 2014 team is purely development. What we're going to try and do is really develop the 1v1s in games. So we're really going to try and start to play every single time a player gets the ball, 1-touch, 2-touch move. That's what we want. Our tier 1 are going to play in the A schedule. Our tier 2 is going to play in a B schedule. And they're not going to be playing at the same time. So what that means is that if tier 1 has this game that week and we need players, we can call up tier 2 players, which is great. And then what that means as well is in the weeks that tier 2 doesn't have a game, our tier 1 players can play with tier 2, or they can actually play with our U10 tier 1 teams. So at this point, you're creating, our U10 tier 2 team. So what you're creating at this point is that the ability for flexibility in the summer. So a U9 tier 1 player can play every week. They can either play their age, tier 1, they could play tier 2 if we think that they really need to work a little bit more on certain skills. So we can say, let's go into tier 2 this week for you, and we'll put you in a winger role because I just want that 1v1. Or we'll put you on a defense role because I really want you to work on your 1v1 defending. And then on top of that, we can say, well, you're not being challenged enough in tier 1. So let's put you in U10 tier 2. So these options are there for all our players. And it's the same thing with U10. They'll do the exact same thing with the U11 tier 2. So they'll be able to play up a year, and the same thing again with our U11s. Because we don't have a tier 1, they'll be able to just go play up with our U12s, and then our U12s will be able to play in our tournaments on U13s. So here's what we're covering at this point. We're able to cover players playing at their with other players of their likeness, of their age. We're able to give that same player opportunities to play up. We're able to give that players opportunity to play down. So we're essentially allowing the player in a really player-centered approach to play at any level that they need to for their development. Having said that, my best player on my U9, they're never going to play on my tier 2 team, ever. I do not want that. That's not helping their development. So we want them to play up every single other week. So they're getting 2 weeks of tier 1, 2 weeks of U10 tier 2. So we're now able to challenge all our players at every level. And that's what true development is. And when I went to Chelsea, that's exactly what they did. Exactly what they did. Players played up, players played their age, players played in different situations, like That's just what it was. And that's the way to develop players. Simple as that. Next, I talk about team chat. So we use WhatsApp. So players go into that. Then I talk about our Monday VO classes, which I absolutely love. And every single one of our players should come to. And I make that as part of our philosophy, which is tactical, right? So as a tactical part of the game, that's what we do for tactics. VO. VO is our tactics method. Then we go into 1v1s. I talk about our holistic approach from that point of view. So we've done tactics. We've now talked about 1v1s, which is really 1v1, 1v1 plus 1, 2v2, and having a low player to ball ratio. And then I show clips of that. Then we talk about our rondos as well. So our rondos, talk a little bit about why that's effective. And then I show examples of that as well. And then we talk about parent education. So parent education piece is really this. This is the podcast. So this is what we talk about for the parent education piece. I also talk about my favorite episode so far, which is episode 277 with Amy Dirks, and that's nutrition for kids. So I talk about that as well. And then again, I go into games. So I talk about now what needs to happen. So they should arrive 30 minutes before the game. For every minute they're late, they're going to sit for half the time. So if they're there 10 minutes late, so they're there 20 minutes before the game, to 5 minutes on the bench, right? I talk about the jerseys, where to buy the jerseys, all that kind of stuff. Again, cheering, not instructing, so just reminding them of that. Every player will at least play 50% of the game. However, some will play more, right? So we have a certain way of playing, and if a player doesn't meet that, they'll at least play half the game. But there are players that play most of the game for us, right? And those are our anchors. We need those players to play the gladiator way. I talk a little bit about goalkeepers, which isn't really that big of a deal anymore, because as of now, we pretty much have a goalkeeper for each team. So, yeah. And yeah, I also talk about that I do private training on Thursdays, and that's it. That's really the end of the meeting. So that is something that we do every single year with our players and our parents. And I want everyone to be aware. And when everyone is on the same page, then everyone understands, right? Everyone can be on the same page. We can get to games. I don't have to worry about parents, and I hate worrying about parents. I don't have to worry about, players coming late and then seeing them and going, well, what's the parents going to think if their child isn't playing? Because they know if they're late, right? So when everyone is on the same page, everything just works smoothly. I haven't really had any parent issues, and I love the parents in our program. They're so supportive. They're so great with players, and they just get it, right? And the only way people get it is if you educate them. And if you don't educate them and you complain, and a lot of coaches do that. Oh, I hate the parents and this. I have so many. No, it's not the parents' fault. Take responsibility, Do the meeting the right way, and then you won't have parents that don't understand where you're coming from. The worst thing you can do is go to a game, parent would yell and this and that, and then go after the game and talk to the parent. No. First of all, nothing happens after the game, in my opinion, because you're heated, they're heated, especially if you lost. And if you're spending the whole time on the bench thinking about that, parents, you're going to be heated when you go up to them. The best time is before the season. Record the meeting. If you have new players, send them the meeting. And then again, new players are on the same page. That's something that I haven't done, to be completely honest. I haven't recorded it and then been able to send it to parents, but that's something that's going to change this year. I'm going to record it with Zoom, and then any new player, that's going to be a recording that's sent to them. Thanks for listening to another episode of Coaching Soccer Weekly. I'm really excited for my parent meeting, and I think it's one of the most important weeks of our academy. It really allows the parents to be on the same page as me, and to me, that's super important. We have our parent meeting this week with our Tier 1 teams, and then next week with our Tier 2 teams. So it'll be a really good couple of weeks as well. Next week, I'll talk about some of the 2v2s that we're doing and how we're doing it and how we're coaching it. If you want to gain a little bit more insight into that, you can listen to Andy's podcast as well, Coaching Inside the Box, which is really great. So really excited to talk about that because we found some different things that I think will help you as well. So until next week, enjoy the moments, enjoy the journey, but most importantly, enjoy the game. Coaching Soccer Weekly is a production of World Class Coaching. All rights reserved.
Hey, thanks for watching all the way to the end, and you can check out more of our videos right here. And if you haven't done so already, I would really appreciate it if you'd hit the like button and the subscribe button.